people. When I first got started with LinkedIn, it was one of those things where one of my employees came into my office one night at midnight or whatever time it was we were working and said, "Hey, have you been on LinkedIn? I sent you an invitation." I'm like, "What is LinkedIn?" This is way back in 2005. And finally, months go by, he comes back in and he says, "Are you on LinkedIn? Did you accept my invitation?" I was like, "No, what is it?" So finally I was like, "Okay, I'll go check it out." And my heart missed a beat when I first opened it up. And I said, "Well, this is something for job seekers or recruiters. I'm not looking for a job. What's he know that I don't know?" So that was my first experience and my first impressions with LinkedIn. Roll the clock forward several years, and I, being a business coach, I wanted to come off the road from doing the big corporate America thing and being a management consultant. I wanted to come off the road and help small business owners. And so I get this call from a compadre over at TCU, an MBA professor, or professor of the MBA program. And he says, "Lucinda, what are you doing on such and such afternoon? Why don't you come over and join us for a LinkedIn training class?" I'm like, "Ed, I'm not looking for a job. I don't need LinkedIn." "Well, guess what? You know, twist the arm, I'll buy you dinner, maybe a little wine." Okay. So I went and I sat in on this LinkedIn class. They'd flown in this guy named Michael Neal, flew him in from Denver, and it's the final semester for the MBA program. So a lot of the MBAs were actually out either at interviews or on their final deliverables for the projects. And so they weren't going to be there. So I actually was there to take a seat, honestly, and dinner. And so here's how it went. I walked in, took my place. I was the good person, being a supporter of my friend. And within 2 hours, Michael Neal showed us the most awesome parts about LinkedIn. And I'm sitting there thinking, boy, did I have a big misconception. So afterwards, we went to dinner, and there were 4 of us business coaches with Michael Neal, and we asked around, or at least I asked my cohorts, I said, "How many of you guys are working with your clients, your business owners, and you know they're on LinkedIn?" And pretty much we didn't know the answer. We went out, we surveyed 110 of our Dallas-Fort Worth business owners, and we learned some amazing information. Somebody thought they were on it, couldn't remember. Another person remembered getting an invite, wasn't sure if they accepted. I mean, it was all over the place, but basically the answer was no, they weren't on it. So our mission, we decided, I mean, the 4 of us business coaches, we looked at LinkedIn and we said, this is like a free website. Why are people not on it? Why are businesses dealing with these web designers? And like, I personally had a client that had already fired 2 web designers, was going for the 3rd one, and was already unhappy. So I'm like, why not use LinkedIn for free? Did I say for free? Yeah, I said for free. And you have control of everything. You can do it on your own. You don't have to hire. You don't have to pay $15,000 for a website. And so that's how we got started. The 4 of us business coaches, we decided we're going to go all the way and get certified with Michael Neal. And that's what we did. So we took off, we took the next class, and then the next class, and then we did our certification time with Mike. So what I want to share with you right now is this is Michael Neal. And if you guys are taking notes, I would say that you go look him up. Go take a look at him on LinkedIn. He claims to be a LinkedIn rock star. I'll support him on that. He's not only achieved Forbes top 50 social media power influencers, but he's done it 4 years in a row. So he's not the new kid on the block. There's several other accolades that he has there, and I'll talk about some of them later. I'll come back to this number right here and talk about that through the presentation. But that's how we got started. And as Gina referred to earlier, the reason why I have a niche, there is only 8 of us that are IA certified in the nation, and there will only be 8 because LinkedIn right after that said, "Thou shalt not certify on behalf of our name." So we have a niche, if you will. Now, for the recruiter in the back of the room, there is a recruiter's training certification, and I'm not talking about that one. LinkedIn does do training on that. But LinkedIn does not do training just for the individuals or small businesses, or actually businesses. So they are more than willing to have us come in and train. So this slide, let's start with what's the benefits of LinkedIn. Even when I present yet to this day, I still find some doubters. I still find some, depending on the generational gap, some that don't want to put much information out there, some that resist, oh, it's social media, I'm not going to touch it, I'm not going to let social media information go, I've heard it's really bad. You know, I still hear all of the negative criticisms. So what I want to do is start to share with you some of the positive things about LinkedIn. First of all, this center right here, does anybody know what the national average is for closing business? In other words, they surveyed those on LinkedIn, and it came back 35% believed it helped them close business or close relationships or help them for career development. In closing, like as in a sale, it's 2 to 3%. And so some people may doubt, well, how can it be 35% on LinkedIn? Well, let's take a look at what drives that. First of all, and I'm going to start down here in the corner, you get access to new places, new markets, new networks that you wouldn't otherwise run into. In other words, not only is it out there for you to search and go find different groups or different affinities, things that you're interested in, but also you've got LinkedIn on the side prompting you with ideas. And so on that right-hand side of your screen, oftentimes it's suggesting, oh, you're a business analyst. How would you like to join IIBA's group? It's suggested. And so there are different areas throughout LinkedIn where it's using some artificial intelligence to look at what are you most interested in. So there are both proactive, suggestive areas where it reaches you, helps you reach new areas, and then there's also the search part where you can go find things. If we look over here at communicating and building, like if you see people that you want to connect with or introduce or get involved with, there's a way for you to directly communicate with them. Once someone sends out an invitation, then it's Mark, right? All right, so if I send an invitation to Mark, Mark can see my picture, I can see Mark's picture, we can read about each other. Guess what's happening? The ice barrier is breaking down. And by the time we actually meet face-to-face, assuming he'll accept my invite, then guess what? It's not like a cold introduction anymore. I know something about his education, something about his background. I feel more comfortable saying, hey, Mark, where are you going in your next career? What are you in search for now? I can ask what that question is. And so, one, it opens doors quicker and faster. It makes it more comfortable. You build stronger relationships because over time, once you're connected on LinkedIn, you grow with that person. You see different things they're doing or they see different things you're doing. And so it builds stronger relationships. Oftentimes, when you send an email or an in-mail on LinkedIn, you'll get a better, quicker response than you will if you send it to their Yahoo or their Gmail or their Outlook or whatever. And why is that? Simple. We get thousands and thousands of emails a day. We get spammed, we get junk mail, it's just a nonstop drinking from the faucet, right? LinkedIn, you get a small quantity. You tend to pay more attention to them. So oftentimes, especially in sales, I teach the salespeople, try a LinkedIn in-mail to get recognition, faster response. So what does that do? Well, obviously, it gets you recognized, it gets you looking at each other, it builds your branding, it enhances what your company may be doing in their website, but overall, it's going to reduce time and cost. So if you think about how long does it take to build relationships if you're going to go face-to-face or networking groups or something like that. Usually if you go to a networking group, you'll go there and you'll meet 1 or 2 people, maybe 3 or 4. Like tonight we broke you in groups, so hopefully you've met at least 4, maybe 5 that you didn't know before. Think about the time it takes to drive to a networking event, think about the time you're here, think about you leave, and you look at those 5 or 6 business cards, and depending on what your objective is, you say, well, did any of these meet my needs? Did any of these meet my objective? So if you're in sales, and by the way, how many of you guys are in sales? And guess what? Every single one of you are in sales. You are in sales. You're here to sell yourself. You're here to sell yourself up to a career. You're here to sell yourself up to that next tier. Every meeting you go to, you are selling yourselves. So from this moment on, you are in sales. Okay? I know you didn't think you were, but guess what? You are. You have to sell yourself to move up that career ladder or get that next lead project, or if there's any job seekers in here, you better be practicing your sales because you got to sell yourself into that job. So my point in saying that is as you go to these networking meetings or events and you think about, did you sell yourself? Did you make a good impression? What do I do with these business cards? Are they any good? You think about that same amount of time you could have been networking or back on LinkedIn. How many connections could you make in 4 hours? How many good ones? How many targeted ones? How many that can help you with your career? So at this point, what I want to do is I want to talk about the network. Because we talked about a face-to-face networking environment. Let's talk about LinkedIn. Now, as I go out and connect, if this is me, let's assume this is Mark. Let's assume that he accepts my invitation. So now when Mark and I look at each other, there's a little 1 next to our pictures, our faces, right? So let's assume now that Mark is connected to Paula. All right? So those 2 are now connected. So when I look on LinkedIn, I look at Mark, there's a little 1 next to him. When I look at Paula, there's a 2 next to her. If she looks at me, there's a 2. Why is there a 2? Because Mark is between us. Okay? So then if Paula is connected to David, when David and I look at each other, it's a 3 next to us. And I'm sitting there going, wow, if I want to get to David, what do I have to do? Well, guess what? I got to work that network. I have got to work from here to Mark, to Paula, to David. If I want to get to David, I've got to ask for introductions. And I can do that on LinkedIn. That's the beauty of LinkedIn. Now, as you look at this side, if I'm looking at my whole network, that was an example of 1 set of relationships. If I'm looking at my whole network and I'm picking out all of these that I want to get to, that I'm not connected with, I'm going to work my network to get there. Now, the beauty of LinkedIn is, this at one point in time, a while back, was my first tier connections. So this was my 1s, 871. With 871 first tier connections, look at my total network. 13 million. 13 million. Is that a good network? Can you get somewhere with that? Can you use that for your career? Yes. Yes. Now, ask me what my network is today.
What's your network today?
Good. Thank you, Joe. I was afraid there was a silence there. I am just connected to barely 2,000, a little over, and my total network is over 19 million. So if there's any job seekers in here that's wanting to build their network pretty fast, somebody in the back room had that question for me. Think about connecting. Think about what it could open doors for you. We're going to talk some more about that in a few minutes. I'm not into power networking or power building, and we're going to talk about that in another couple of slides here. What I am going to talk about, though, is using your time wisely. So how many of you are on Facebook? Most everybody. Okay, Twitter. Okay, Instagram. Okay, Google Plus. Okay, Pinterest. Okay, there's about 250, 350 more social medias out there. I'm not going to go through all of them, but those are the big ones here in the United States. And then beyond that, there are multiple languages, and they're just growing proliferately. So my point in asking the question is, how many of you go out to these? And I don't know about you, but I go out to Facebook. I'm not a strong Facebook person. But I go out there and I punch buttons and, oh, there's a hyperlink, and I go there and I go there and I look around and all. Guess what? I have just lost 2 hours. And at the end of 2 hours, I'm like, well, I saw some great pictures and I said hello to some great friends and I reconnected. But I have just wasted 2 hours. So when we teach LinkedIn, instead of doing that random click here, click there, and go wherever and then you get lost, we teach to do it in a structured manner that will give you the most benefit for your time spent. I'm into ROI, right? Return on invested time, because time is something we don't have. So I want you to look at this chart up here and ignore this first chevron for a second. But we teach into these 4 different areas. And as you work through each of these areas, you build on what you learn. So that every time you go in, you're building more on top of something you've already laid the foundation for. So you're not jumping around and doing the random thing like people do on Facebook. So this first one is all about you. This is your profile or your company's profile page. This is building you up to be the most credible you can be on LinkedIn. Now, all beginners, when you first get on LinkedIn, you accept their invitation, you go out there and it says, oh, would you like to populate your profile? It prompts you with some fields, you put something in there. Oh, basically, let's load up your resume, I'm done. Well, guess what? You're not done. There's more to it than that. But LinkedIn will prompt you and say, oh, I see you're on LinkedIn. How would you like for me to, and I'm going to pick on this gentleman over here. Gary, I'm LinkedIn. How would you like for me to send invites to, are you on Outlook, Gmail, Yahoo? Outlook. All right, he's on Outlook. And how many contacts do you have, Gary?
Outlook.
Yeah, just a guess.
1,000.
1,000. Okay, so if LinkedIn prompts him with, how would you like for me to send out these invites? Gary might be thinking, well, yeah, that's a whole lot easier than me sitting there typing in invites, 1,000 of them. I'll just never do it. So he may hit that button. Don't ever hit that button. Don't ever hit that button. That's a kind offer, LinkedIn, but don't do it. Here's the reason why. Lucinda has over 8,000 in her Outlook, and you know what? If I hit that button, it would start spamming them out there, shooting them out there. That generic basically says, I don't care about you. It says, I'd like to invite you to my professional network. Doesn't that just... So, the other thing it does is it starts shooting them out, starts hopefully with my A's. It will die by the time it gets to L or M or N or something like that in my alphabet. Why? Because in a lifetime, write this down, in a lifetime you can only use 3,000 invitations. LinkedIn doesn't tell you that. There's no little tracker or ticker going off as you use them. And so if I hit that button, I would be out of invitations, I'd be basically dead in the water, and it sent invites to my dead grandmother, people that don't work at that company anymore, all those bad emails. So whatever you do, don't hit that button. I'm going to ask you to hold questions till the end, is that all right? I just want to make sure we get through it. Okay, so now you've had your one-on-one lesson on what a beginner does with their profile. All right, and a beginner starts shooting out invites when they're not credible yet. Doesn't make sense to me, but they don't know it. Then in the network, all right, here, most people know about the invitation and accepting an invitation, and that's pretty much what they think the network is on LinkedIn. I'm going to come back to this later. I'm just going to tell you that there are more than 9 ways to network on LinkedIn, and inviting is only one. Then there's applications to differentiate yourself, make you stand out in the crowd. I mean, you're continuing to compete with millions out there. So how do you stand out? If there are 5,000 business analysts all competing for that next promotion, how do you rock? They say, how do you snap? How do you pop? How do you stand out? What's it take to get noticed by those recruiters? So think about applications on top. The far right over here is my absolute most favorite part of LinkedIn. And this is its searching capability. This is the most valuable part, and this is the part that a beginner, a novice, doesn't quite understand for a very long time. All right, so a beginner will go and they'll search. I want to search for Joe Blow. So they type in Joe Blow. Guaranteed everybody will come back with 100 search results for Joe Blow. That's the way it works. They come back, they fill up 10 per page, you get 10 pages, and it cuts off. A beginner will think that they've gotten good results. Sounds good to me. What they won't know is those search results are dependent on what effort you put in building out your profile up here. So if you have a crappy, or barely there, or you just loaded your resume on here, what are you getting out the back? Probably not very good results, but you don't know it because you're still thinking, oh, I got numbers. Well, numbers aren't everything, it's quality. So if you beef up this, make it credible, then you start your network, then you start making this credible as you can get. What was that certification, CBAPs? And Gina said there are how many? 5,000 is what I heard. All right, so if you're a BA and you don't have your CBAP, then, think about what that could do for you. Think about connecting with those that do and starting to get in that group. Makes it more credible, better search results. Net, if I backed up and I asked you today, what's your strategy for using LinkedIn? Most people say something like, I'm looking for a job, or I'm looking to advance my career. Some people don't think about using LinkedIn until they're laid off. Guess what? That's too late, guys. You need to be building 2 years in advance of getting laid off. And if you're not laid off today, guess what? There's always tomorrow, and you could be. So don't wait till you get laid off. And I'm sure the recruiters will tell you that too. What have you been doing if you haven't been on LinkedIn? What have you been doing if you're on LinkedIn but you're not credible? So that's the emphasis of taking a look at these. As we go through training, we go through each of these areas and lay out what you should and should not do in the different fields. LinkedIn prompts you with a field, so people plug something in. They prompt you with another field, they plug something in. Remember that guy that hit the gotcha button? Gotcha, right? So be careful what you put in there. As we go through and learn what you should or shouldn't do and where people are in violations, are there any realtors in here? Okay, I can say it then. You will see realtors on LinkedIn doing things that are against, and I'm not just picking on realtors, insurance guys do it, there are other professions, that they're Mr. Salesman right out there, putting their phone number out there in illegal places. There's other things they're doing. LinkedIn will shut you down for violating the agreement. If you violate the agreement, they'll shut you down without any notice. So let's back up. Strategy. What are you trying to get out of your LinkedIn and build for a purpose? Have a big ROI so that you're moving, building on those building blocks to get somewhere. Ask yourself, are you trying to attract someone to you? Which if you're in a current position, you may be wanting to attract people to you. If you're already out of a position, you may be targeting trying to get in. You may be targeting not only to get to members, but to groups or companies. So when I say the words attraction and I say the words targeting, I'm using it broader than just people. What is LinkedIn? You can think of it as a huge database, 330 million members, 7.2 million companies, and 2.1 million groups. every single time I give this presentation, well, not if I give it 2 days in a row, but pretty much every single time I give this presentation, these bottom two numbers are just growing crazy. These are growing so fast. There's 2 LinkedIn members joining every second. So that is phenomenal. LinkedIn will probably never be as large as Facebook because we know Facebook's demographics is just about anybody in the world joins Facebook. But LinkedIn is the #1 business professionals network. And LinkedIn's goal is to get it global. They're in multiple countries around the world, multiple languages already, over 20 languages. But their goal is to get to 1 billion. You can see all these other numbers over here. And the job seeker number, even though the economy is improving and our labor rates are getting better, you will see that the jobs are just still slowly, the job openings are going up like this. But people have a higher chance of getting a job if they're on LinkedIn and they're credible and they're looking good. And I've got another example coming up here in a few minutes of what it takes to actually land a job ahead of your competition. Okay, so we've talked about finding new opportunities. We've talked about attraction. I mentioned it was a free billboard, a free website for my business owners and for you. It's for you to brand yourself. It's your digital presence. And this is where, in the old-fashioned days, we'd walk in and we'd hand our paper resume over to the recruiter, right? We worked hard to get that thing looking good, and everything fit on 1 page or 2 page or whatever the requirement was. I'm going to say this twice. If your LinkedIn profile looks like your resume, start over. Did I say that correctly? There are resumes, and there are resume guidelines. A LinkedIn profile is not equal to your resume. It is so much more. It is about you branding yourself, selling yourself, right? Is it Sharon?
Harlan.
What is it?
Harlan, rhymes with darling.
Harley. Okay. Harlan. I get it. Carlin.
Yes.
With K.
See.
C. Oh, gosh. Okay. Murphy's Law. Okay. Carlin. Hopefully would attest to this. I don't know. I'm not going to try my luck anymore. But the thing is your LinkedIn profile is about you. A resume is history. I did this, and I did this, and I did this in the dinosaur days. Okay? And then you polish it up and you make it sound good. On your LinkedIn profile, you've got the summary at the top. The summary is what you're about. It's playing it forward. It is not for you to project anything that's not true, but I am to say, turn it into marketing yourself. It's your chance to market what you can do. You still have all those places down there in career when you were, whatever your title was, business analyst at AT&T or whatever. You still got a place down there to put that in. But I'm also going to suggest to you that if you've copied that paragraph from your resume into your LinkedIn profile, what am I going to say? Start over. You're right. You're getting it. Okay. All right, because it is not for just your resume. Last but not least, you notice there's some suggestive information out there and search engine searchable. And I'm going to talk about that right now. Okay. One of LinkedIn's partners, everybody knows that LinkedIn went through their IPO a few years ago, right? The most famous IPO since Google 10 years prior, the most profitable, and everything's going uphill. Anybody hear about the Facebook debacle? Pretty bad, huh? Yeah. Okay, so let me back up and say, when LinkedIn went through their IPO, they had 25 strategic partners. They had some famous ones in there. What's the #1 search engine in the world? Google. What's the #2?
Yeah.
Okay, you guys are business analysts. Come on. I haven't heard it. No? YouTube. YouTube is the #2 search engine in the world, and it is growing like crazy. Why? YouTube is owned by Google. That's one reason. Second reason, look at all the millennials coming through. They have attention deficit like you can't believe. They've got their radio going, they've got their MP3 going, they've got their TV going, they've got their smartphone flipping out at them. They've got all this stuff going. If you give them any more than a 30-second video, they're not going to pay attention to you. So that's what's coming up the career paths now. Now, that causes the explosion of YouTube. But let me just say, even for us with gray hair, we all know that a picture is worth 1,000 words. What's a video worth? Going once, going twice? Nope, 1,000,000. All right? So, if you are out there thinking what Lucinda's about to say only applies to businesses, let me just make sure you're listening. Most of us all have a picture on our LinkedIn profile. If you don't, write it down. You really need to get one really fast. Nobody will connect with ghosts. You look suspicious, and I am not going to connect with somebody I don't know. I can't see their face and their eyes and fresh. Second thing is because of the era we're going on with videos, oh my gosh, how many of you guys have a video CV in here? Video CV. Video CV is a video resume, a live resume. We have one. Okay, write this down. If you are looking for a job and you want to stand out, get yourself a video resume. Video CV is what they're called. Doesn't take much. It's not hard. Don't make it longer than maybe a minute, maybe 2 if you have to. But stand out for those recruiters. Make sure you practice. Don't put any little childhood or get help. There's a lot of career places that you can get coaching. I help with coaching and helping people with their scripting and all that. Can I hold the questions till the end? All right, thank you. Okay, so let's move on now. All right, we got to chuckle over here. All right, let's move on. A lot of people put their photo out on LinkedIn because, once again, LinkedIn prompts you with a field. Fill it up. Please give me your photo. Load it up, right? Okay. So here's Joe. Joe Bart. Oh, Joe Bart. He thinks he's looking good, right? Does anybody recognize Joe Bart? Walking Dead? Anybody a fan of Walking Dead? I didn't even know who Walking Dead was. But by LinkedIn's legal rules, I personally cannot put a photo up there unless I get that person's approval to use their LinkedIn profile. So this is the best I can do, right? This is a fictitious Joe Bart. He's a project leader at Ocules. Does Ocules mean anything to any of you guys? No? He's a project lead. Well, do you know what kind of projects he does? No. Okay, well, Joe, you're not doing so good yet. Okay, he's from Salina. Salina where? Does anybody know where Salina is? Okay, I don't know. All right, he works currently at Ocules. He previously was at LMR LLC, and oh, I do recognize his school, University of Illinois. He's got about 180 connections. He's rocking. He's feeling good about himself. He's feeling really comfortable. Well, guess what, Joe? You don't even realize where you're at. Okay? Fact number 1 is he's oblivious to how he looks. Fact number 2 is, remember how I said that as soon as you get on LinkedIn, then they're always coming back prompting you going, would you like to connect? Would you like to connect? If you do a search, that whole page of people come up and the little buttons on the right say connect, 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 connect. A beginner will go connect, connect, connect. Don't you do that. Don't do a beginner. All right? So he's guilty of that. And then third, he's looked on LinkedIn. There's a completeness score over to the right of your profile. Somebody in here told me they were a rock star. I'm not going to reveal any names, but there is somebody in this room that looks pretty good on there. That measurement is, did you fill in the blanks? Did you stuff something in there? So it's 100% complete. It's nothing about quality. It's nothing about branding. It's nothing about marketing you. It's did you put something in there? And oh my gosh, if you don't have a patent, or if you don't have a volunteer committee that you're working on, or if you don't have a project you're working on right now, oh my goodness, it's going to degrade you, and you're not going to be a rock star because you didn't fill out everything. Because maybe you don't have a patent. Not all of us in this world do. So my point in saying that is that's based on quantity. Don't let it fool you. Don't think you're a rock star when you may not be. Here's Joe looking at him under the start of a scorecard. And I pointed out Joe Bart. Okay, he did all right with his name. Project leader. Well, you know what? That is a place for you to put your headline. That is not a place for you to put your title. Project lead of Oculus says nothing. You don't know if he makes websites or if he does aircraft carriers. This is a place for you to put your headline, not your title. So if you've got your title up there, think about what you could do better to attract more people. Right now, if you sent me an invite and I'd look at that, I was like, why should I connect with him? Salina, if you're trying to connect, if you're trying to attract people, you know what? Very few people know that that's Dallas-Fort Worth. Oh my God, why would you not put Dallas-Fort Worth on there? Duh. It's because LinkedIn prompted him. He put in a zip code and it came up with Salina. He thought he was done. So there are many points that I could make about looking at profiles and how people look naive or they've missed an opportunity here, there, everywhere. There are over 40 fields on LinkedIn for your individual profile, and there are over 30 for your company page. So you should think about where you can improve. And just when you're starting to feel comfortable, think about Joe Bart. Okay, I usually at this point I point out just 2 or 3 important places. I have pointed out that you need a professional looking picture. This is not a place for your Facebook picture where you've got your dog, your cat, your boat, your new motorcycle. Okay? It is not a place for your company logo or your avatar. It is not a place to put a cartoon. It's for me to see your face this close, eyeball to eyeball, light, bright, and in professional attire. Got it? All right. Secondly, we've talked about the headline. We've talked about where you're at. The other thing that most people do is when I pull them up, you can tell a beginner in a heartbeat. You pull it up. This is called the summary. And you look in here, and there's 1 or 2 lines. And I'm making this up, but it says, I'm a business analyst. Contact me at 972 blah, 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 blah. That is not what goes there. This is your summary. This is one of the top 5 places on LinkedIn that a viewer is going to look. And if you don't capture them in, how many of you guys know how long it takes to capture a recruiter's eyes? If they're looking at your resume. 6 seconds. Okay. Nell has the answer for the digital world. The paper copy was back in the 30 seconds to a minute when we had to flip pages and use highlighters and throw the rest on the floor in the trash. We are down to 6 to 7 seconds on average for a recruiter. So you have got to grab them with the picture, you've got to grab them with the headline, you've got to grab them with the summary, and there are a few other places. But this is one of the top ones. So don't pass over it. You're going to rewrite that section again and again and again until you get it so it plays forward, it markets you, it brands you, it puts you in the best light that you can be in. Okay? So now that I've taken you through a little bit more about that exercise, this picture may have more meaning. Okay? I've pointed out some obvious flaws that beginners make, and they show that they're naive by what's on your profile or not. And we've talked about building on it after you're ready and credible, and how you're trying to attract and target. This right here, think of this as a big, huge magnet. And I've talked about marketing. I've talked about keywords. What I haven't necessarily talked about is, does everybody know what SEO is? Search engine optimization. In simple words, it's keywords. So if you go out, how many of you guys have searched on yourself outside of LinkedIn in Google? Did you come up? Pretty good. All right, so don't search on your name, try searching on what you do and see what happens. Then go inside of LinkedIn and do those same searches again. And you know what? If all those CBAPs come up above you, you've got some work to do. I once got a call from a coach that I had taught. I taught the International Coaches Federation. And so these two ladies were both coaches in the same class. They went through the same training, same time. And I got a call about 6 to 9 months later. The one calls me and says, hey, I see, and I'm making up the name, but I see Mary. And every time I type in, and I'm making this part up too, the life coach, because they're really executive coaches, but every time I type that in, she comes up higher than me. Why? We took class together. I'm hiring you. Come help me get higher. So we did. That's what we worked on. The point is you have got to help yourself because you are competing with that search engine. That search engine uses Google. That search engine is sitting on top of Google. So as you see improvements to Google, you see improvements to LinkedIn. So just like Google, when you're out there Googling, it's now smart enough, like if you're looking up where's the closest barbecue, it's smart enough now to know where your GPS is. And so with that, you know that it's got that artificial intelligence working. That's where you need to think about what are you putting in to pull those up. And what are you going after? On the right-hand side are the demographics of those on LinkedIn. Average income, over $109,000 a year. 36% are decision makers. That's where you want to go, right? Those are the people you want to connect with. This next part is talking about visuals. And if you think about the history of LinkedIn, it was all text. For the first years I was on there, I was like, oh, darn, I wish we could put some pictures on here. Some people read text. Some people are audio. They listen to tapes. Others are visuals. They like graphics. So if you're trying to attract your viewers, you have to communicate all three ways. So my point in saying this is there are several places out on LinkedIn that you can add visuals. And that can be anywhere from white papers to pictures to TV shows, videos, banners, you name it. Think about what you can put out there. In the last 30 days, LinkedIn has come out with some really cool new places out there. In fact, it was enough that I've put a whole new course together just on visuals because it's been lacking for so long. This is what I promised earlier about if you're a job seeker out there or looking to get promoted, what can you do to stand out? More than visuals, or as much as visuals. If you look at these percent of the odds of getting recognized, I will surmise to you that there is nothing stronger than a recommendation. Why is that? Well, if you've got a website, you see all these businesses put out a testimonial about they have the best product and Mary Jo said it's the best product or the best service or whatever. First of all, somebody wrote it, somebody handed it to a web designer, the web designer just copied and pasted in there. You don't know Mary Jo's real. You don't know that Mary Jo ever said it. There is no validity check. On LinkedIn, there is no way that I can put a recommendation on myself saying, Lucinda walks on water, Lucinda walks on water, and Lucinda walks on water. You can't do it. You just can't do it. You have to have that other person give you a recommendation. And that's why it's so strong. The other reason it's so strong is because when someone's reading that recommendation, right beside that recommendation is that person's picture. That picture has got a hyperlink if they click on it, or the name is a hyperlink. Either way, you can click on it and you can go see, is that person credible enough to make a recommendation for that person? For example, if you're a business analyst, the last thing you want is your taxi cab driver making a recommendation to you about you. Yeah, he takes me to the airport every Monday. Yeah, okay. That's not credible. And that's why a recommendation is stronger than anything else. All right, networking. We've sort of in a way already talked about this. A naive person will pull up their invites. They get so excited because they get invitations. It's kind of exciting to get invited to do something. And they will do accept, accept, accept. If you're guilty of that, write down, stop doing it. All right, this next part is talking about never making a cold call again. Before you go in for that next interview, before you go in for that next meeting, before you're going in to sell, maybe you've got a new design or solution, do some background checks on the people you're going to talk to. You'll impress them because you know something about them. Build your credibility. There's all kinds of information out there on companies. There's plenty of research that you can do about a company. Usually I talk more about this when I'm talking to a sales group. Now, we're talking about networking. How many of you guys are in groups? Actively in groups. Do you know how to operate in a group? Do you know what the acceptable rules are? Do you know there are rules in a group? Have you read them? Do you know what's against the rules in the group? Do you know how to connect with somebody in the group? There's all kinds of things you can do in the group. I usually see this as the biggest area for naive people not knowing what to do or out there self-promoting and not understanding the business etiquette. All right, so we've talked about members, we've talked about companies, we've talked about groups. Notice I just put in there, it's just data if you don't know how to use it. Now, let's roll the clock forward. Remember I said earlier that LinkedIn is a place for having your digital presence? You were probably thinking I was talking about you being on LinkedIn. But if you think about it, once you're on LinkedIn or any of those social medias, you're really out there for any of these other applications to pick up and use 24/7. So it's not just you handing that piece of paper, resume, and then you walk out and the person will forget you. No, you're on display now 24/7. This happens to be an application that runs, like for me, I've loaded it in my Outlook. It runs in my Outlook, but when I go and I click on Carrie's, when I go to look up Carrie, I will see not only Carrie, but then I'll see, oh, Carrie's on LinkedIn. Here's what she's been doing on LinkedIn. She's on Twitter. Oh my gosh, she's busy today. She's on Facebook. She's on Pinterest. She's searching for a wedding gown or whatever. I can see more than just what you guys are thinking people are seeing. So don't be disillusioned. This application, many of you may not recognize it, but just remember it's inbox spelled backwards. And there are plenty more like that. But they run off of your smartphone, so people can be checking you out 24/7. Now, what's coming? Here's some up-and-coming things, even for the rock star that's in here, that's an advanced LinkedIn user. This is talking about the artificial intelligence. As you see the wave and the trend of Google and the things that they're adding, think about, okay, how many months will it be until we get the same in LinkedIn? All right, so I've explained the relationship. We just want to know when now, right? Let's ask LinkedIn. There's new visuals. I talked about that. There's a new company that LinkedIn just acquired, BizO, and it's a B2B marketing platform. About the time they acquired BizO, actually right before they acquired it, they added a new feature in LinkedIn so that as you look at somebody, you can set a reminder and call back. It's not that useful of a function yet, but you know what? It's on its way because once you add on a CRM and a marketing platform, where do you think it's going to go? It's going to help the salespeople a lot. The last three are new things that are recent. So in summary, I want to close with LinkedIn is absolutely an incredible tool. There's nothing else like it. Plaxo's pretty much died. That might be the only other one that's close to it. Jigsaw has pretty well died. So, I mean, there just isn't any competition. The next thing I want to ask you is, do you have a strategy for your LinkedIn? Do you know where you're going? Do you know how to use it, or are you just sitting back letting it happen? How do you look? Are you Joe, the dead man walking? Or this is actually Dallas Roberts. He's out of Houston, Texas. This is what the actor looks like when he cleans up. Takes off all that makeup. Nice looking. All right, 9 ways to get to your prospect. And more questions about what vibes are you giving off? Are you passive? Are you active on it? What are you doing? In closing, I want to say you guys have an evaluation in front of you, so I'd love for you to fill it out. I'd love for some feedback. If you haven't got the business cards yet, they'll be coming to you, or come up here and get one from Patricia. When we do things like this, I always like to let people know when the next training series is, and this is in the classroom. And the reason why I put this up is because I only teach it 3 times a year. I do lots of webinars and public speaking and consulting, but you can only catch the training classes once a year. It's taught with 2 screens. So PowerPoint's on the left, just like you're seeing me here. And then I would have another screen where you see me live, and then you'd be in front of your PC actually doing it. And lots of handouts and that sort. Okay, and this is the equivalent of, if you think you're doing fine on LinkedIn, but you can't figure out why you're not getting more out of it, or you can't get results, you could do a red, yellow, green. Everybody knows what a red, yellow, green scorecard is, right? You can have that at your disposal too. So with that, I'm going to ask Joe, how many minutes do we have?
It's 8 o'clock now.
Actually, we finish up at 8, but I'm sure our good friends at the Bravo Tech won't mind if we take a moment to questions and also finish up.